Welcome to DES Leadership Academy, maximizing the impact of learning through the use of interactive notebooks, Part 2. I'm Dr. Anna Alhu. I'd like to take a brief moment and talk about teacher feedback. In our previous presentation on interactive notebooks, I shared with you some feedback that teachers had put on student work that was found in their interactive notebooks. It's important that the teacher feedback is specific and helps advance students' thinking. It moves students to the next level. It's important that the teacher feedback is frequent and based on individual academic needs. It's important that the interactive notebooks are a part of common planning and data chats, and they're a part of student-led parent-teacher conferences. Let me dig a little deeper. If you recall your years in college, and when you turn in essays, teachers would give you feedback and have questions possibly for you to prompt you to move to the next level. That's what we're talking about. If you've done your doctorate, you know how many times you have to write your dissertation and you're getting constant feedback. That feedback helps you get to the next level. That's what we're talking about. Not a check mark or just a positive comment. That really doesn't help students move to the next level. So when you're thinking about teacher feedback, I want you to think about how will my feedback move my students to the next level of thinking. What I love about these interactive notebooks is that they are geared towards the individual's academic needs. The feedback you're giving in one notebook for one student is going to look differently than the feedback you're giving to another because they're at different stages of learning. These notebooks can be taken to your professional learning communities and your common planning there when you're having data chats so you can show evidence if your students are learning or if they're not, if they're having difficulty or they're mastering the concepts. These are beautiful ways of sharing the work with our parents. Having students present their learning to parents during a parent-teacher conference just solidifies not only for the student that they're learning, but it confirms to the parent that their child is growing in knowledge and understanding of the concepts presented. A few of you have asked, well, where do we start? Well, I would suggest that when you set up these interactive notebooks, you begin with the standards that are to be mastered in your content area. Here you can see that this is from Mathematics Grade 6. It has to do with operations with decimals. It's for regular and advanced students. The learning goal: students will fluently add, subtract, multiply, and divide multi-digit decimals. As you can see, on the left-hand side, there are these ratings, or we call them scales. They go from 1 to 4. And if you can think of 1 is the basic level when students are initially introduced the concept, to 4 where they've moved beyond proficiency, which is 3. Most of your students may fall in 3, but you really want to push kids to a level 4. Let's look at these. A student at a level 1 can accurately multiply and divide whole numbers and fractions. Let's go back to the learning goal. The learning goal says students will fluently add, subtract, multiply, and divide multi-digit decimals. Well, level 1 student is still not there. Level 2 students can fluently add and subtract multi-digit decimals using the standard algorithm for each operation. Students can recall specific vocabulary terms such as decimal, divide, dividend, divisor, multiply, operation, product, quotient, rational number, symbol, whole number. But they still are not meeting the full intent of the learning goal. Now, a proficient student, which be a student at a level 3, students can fluently multiply and divide multi-digit decimals using the standard algorithm for each operation. The difference between 3 and 4, I'm sorry, 3 and 2 was that students can fluently add and subtract, whereas in 3 they could multiply and divide. The next level, a level 4, and I always tell teachers, you want your kids at a level 4. Students can apply multiplication and division of rational numbers. Now, those standards that are covered here, well, they're written primarily for adults. But let's look at I can statements, and that's where I want to drive you to when you're setting up these notebooks. The language needs to be understandable for the student. They must own this learning. So let's look at the level 3 student, where for the adult it says students can fluently multiply and divide multi-digit decimals using the standard algorithm for each operation. The I can statements are written so the student internalizes what they need to learn. I can divide decimals by a decimal. I can divide decimals by whole numbers. I can divide multi-digit whole numbers. I can model decimal division. I can estimate to check whether the decimal point was placed correctly in the product. I can multiply decimals. I can model decimal multiplication. I want you to pause and think about those I can statements. Look at the heading they're under. Student evidences. You see, the beauty about using I can statements is that students need to prove that they can, and that would be in their notebook. So you would start your unit with the learning goal and I can statements. Now, I've seen where teachers have students move from the level 1 all the way to 3, and the I can statements build upon each other until they get to level 3. But that's purely up to you. You as a teacher can have students start at 3. Why do you have to start at the first one? But again, there may be some students that need scaffolding. When you're designing your lessons, think of student evidences and these I can statements that will be part of the interactive notebook. Here's one for kindergarten. Students will fluently represent, count, and write numerals 11 to 19. If a student were starting at a level 1, they'd be use counting in numbers to determine quantities of 5. And a student can write in their notebook, I can represent numbers 0 through 5. I can count numbers 0 through 5. I can use written numerals to write numbers 0 through 5. Then they would work themselves all the way up until proficiency, which would be I can represent numbers from 11 to 19, I can count number from 11 to 19, and I can use written numerals to write numbers from 0 to 19. Remember this, students have no idea where the ceiling is. So go all the way to 4. I can use numbers beyond 19 to solve real world math problems. Think of relevancy when you're designing your lessons. I can represent, count, and write numerals beyond 19. Why not? You see, kids will go as far as you think they'll go. They don't know any better. I would push you to have students aim for level 4. In the next few slides, you'll see more evidence in reference to academic notebooks. Here, students are using closed reading strategies. And as you can see, the teachers check mark and X's. I share these with you because when you're starting, feedback is going to be one of the most challenging pieces for a teacher. You've got 25 kids. You're thinking, how am I going to give feedback to each and every one of them? I would suggest to you, when kids are working in small groups, take that time, have them come and bring the notebooks, and you could give feedback to them, not only in writing, but also in a small conference setting. Constant variable. Anything in the experiment that stays the same, it's also called the controlled variable. Again, having it all in the notebook helps students be able to come back and refer to it. How big is a 1 whole, 10th, 100th, 1,000th? You can't see really to the right, but you can see that students would have to demonstrate that they knew how big a whole, a 10th, 100th, and 1,000th is. Here are the types of variables. More on millions through thousandths and number forms. Multiplication charts. I'll tell you, automaticity needs to be achieved, and it needs to be at elementary school. The kids need to know their multiplication chart so they don't use so much of the working memory. It needs to be embedded in long term. Again, students demonstrating what they know. If you don't see it, it's not happening. Here's some other I can statements. I can count to 5, I can count to 10, to 20, I can count 5 objects, I can count 10 objects, I can find numbers 1 through 5, I can find numbers 6 through 9. I've included some high school standards and I can statements. This one is from English. Demonstrate command of the conventions of standard English, grammar, and usage when writing or speaking. Apply the understanding that usage is a matter of convention, can change over time, and is sometimes contested. That's what you want to see. Here are the I can statements. I can recognize that usage is a matter of convention, can change over time, and is sometimes contested. I can apply understanding that usage is a matter of convention, can change over time, and is sometimes contested. I can demonstrate command of the conventions of standard English grammar and usage when writing. And the last one repeats. The last one is I can demonstrate command of the conventions of standard English grammar and usage in writing. So you go from the recognition to the demonstrating the usage in writing. The next standard, demonstrate command of the conventions of standard English grammar and usage when writing or speaking. You'd resolve issues of complex or contested usage consulting references and list the dictionaries as needed. I can identify issues of complex or contested usage consulting references, Merriam-Webster's Dictionary of English Usage, Gardner's Modern American Usage as needed. I can resolve issues of complex or contested usage consulting references as needed. I can demonstrate command of the conventions of standard English grammar and usage when writing. I can demonstrate command of conventions of standard English grammar and usage in writing. These I can statements are developed by the teachers. This is done in a professional learning community. You look at your standard, you deconstruct it, and then you create these levels of I can statements. This is an earlier grades I can statement chart. I can make a picture or mental image. I can use text features. I can summarize the text. I can explain the main idea and supporting details. I can identify and explain the author's purpose. I can identify literacy elements. I can identify and explain cause and effect. These individual I can statements would be in the notebook, followed by evidence for each one of them. Now, this can take a couple of weeks because students need to continue to work until it is mastered. But you will have the evidence in the notebook. In fact, what you'll have is a pattern where students are growing in knowledge. Here's another one. I can use details to describe the major events in a story. And that's for third grade, reading language arts. I truly hope that you've learned something in reference to interactive notebooks. They really, really help students. You anchor them because they are able to refer back to their work. You're able to see the progress they've made. And most of all, the students see it. And that's what it's about, is having students see their growth and see how much they've learned and see how much they've struggled sometimes with content, but have been able to overcome it. Pieces of paper in a stack, in their desks, lost in their backpacks. That's just knowledge that just comes in and out. Think of this. Students go sometimes, if they're in middle school or in high school, to 6 different teachers. How do we expect them to remember what they learned in first period, maybe for 30 minutes, by the time they're in 6th period? Interactive notebooks help students come back to where they were learning and grow. I would encourage you for the last assignment is create a sample interactive notebook using one of your content area standards. Write out I can statements for students to write in their notebooks. Include the evidence that you would accept to demonstrate mastery of the I can statement or standard. I'll be available next week, or I would say to you, the 25th, I believe. And feel free to go ahead and email me and I'll send you the Zoom information. Thank you again. And I am proud of our profession and I'm proud of you for staying and sticking with it. And I wish you all only the very best.